What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron. It's a little bit of a different basement setup. I'm usually in that corner, but we're recording this at 9 a.m. It's just kind of how the schedule worked out this week, and we have some sun glaring through. I got to get some curtains or something, so that's screwing up the brightness. So I had to set myself up in a different spot in the room. Ignore the messy jerseys and the sweatshirts. It happens to the best of us. Today, we're going to be talking about my top 24 wide receivers for Week 11 of the fantasy football season, going through my tiers and my rankings because you guys wanted that. You guys are telling me in the comments these are the way to go for these weekly ranking type videos. Now, before we get into this video, we have that Thursday night football game tonight, Falcons versus the Patriots. And if you guys want to spice things up a little bit for little Thursday night football going on, you're hanging out with the buddies. Maybe you don't have fantasy football players playing tonight. If you want to hop in there, you can do pick'em contests. You can do a draft as well, where you go in there, you draft 4 flex players. I want to say for the Monday night game, it was Debo, Jeff Wilson, Sony Michel, and I want to say maybe it wasn't Cup, but you get 4 flex players. You go out there, if you score a bunch of points, you can turn I think $5, $10, $25 into $500. You can do the pick'em games. You do over-unders, receiving yards, passing yards, all that good stuff. They have even college football pick'ems now on Underdog. So if you hop on there, the link will be in the description. It'll be down below in the comments. You can hop on there. It'll take you straight to the app. It'll take you straight to the website. You sign up, you deposit, use my promo code RON. When you deposit, they will match your deposit over on Underdog. I don't know how or why they're doing this, but if you deposit $20, they'll match $20. If you deposit $50, they'll match your $50. They will do that all the way up into $100. So make sure you take advantage of that promo because I know it's not going to last for much longer. Now, with that being said, we're going to hop straight into this video. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag.
All right. And now we're in the top right where we belong. And we just wrapped up the running back video last night. We're going to get into these wide receivers. And in S tier, we have 2 guys that I feel firmly about that belong in S tier on a weekly basis. Now, for those of you guys out there that are new, it's just S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, all the way down to F tier. And these are just the way that I would rank players. And pretty much, it's early in the week. This is how I kind of feel about these players. I kind of really lock in these rankings later on tonight when I sit down and really dive deep into the rankings, do research. All that's on Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart, where I come out with my weekly rankings all the way to 60 wide receivers, 50 running backs, and I really do my deep dives. But these tiers are pretty much, if you want to argue any wide receiver over another wide receiver that I have within the same tier, I'm not going to fault you for it. But I feel strongly about the guys that I divide by tier. And in S tier, we have 2 wide receivers. One is Tyreek Hill, and we talked about it yesterday, or in the video you're going to see earlier today. We want as many pieces in this game as possible, especially the pass catchers, right? So Tyreek Hill is going to be at home against Dallas. We're going to have the Cowboys versus the Chiefs. This could be a game that has 70 points scored. It wouldn't shock me at all. The over-under is set at 56. I want all the playmakers. Give me any playmaker in this game. Everyone is a threat to score touchdowns. Even a Byron Pringle is a nice flyer, waiver wire guy if you're in a 16-teamer with 2 flexes. But yeah, I want as many pieces as possible in this offense. Tyreek Hill is averaging 21 points per game. He's having a career high in target share that no one's really talking about. And if this offense just starts clicking and they start playing with some efficiency, Tyreek Hill is going to be a problem. Then we have Davante Adams. Again, S tier would have Cooper Kupp right here, but Cooper Kupp on bye. Davante Adams going to be in Minnesota, and he hasn't seen a boom week since missing week 8 with COVID, right? So that was the Cardinals game on Thursday night. And, I think we have a Davante Adams, boom type game on the slate this week. He's still seeing huge volume with Aaron Rodgers. The Vikings allow the 12th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And this just feels, I said this yesterday. It was this divisional game, Green Bay Packers versus Vikings. It seems to be one of those games that always has, fantasy producers and big plays. And for that reason, Davante Adams, he's going to get a ton of targets, a ton of volume. He hasn't clicked yet with Aaron Rodgers since coming back from COVID. I think that this is probably where they get right. And Davante Adams is probably in the range of, a 15-plus point game. Now, moving on to A tier. This is still a very strong tier. This just isn't, these guys are the elite. But guys that are still very firm are wide receiver ones. We're going to start off with Stephon Diggs. And Diggs proved last week that he's that boy. He's that boy. He came out there. He played really well. It was the first time where I felt like Stephon Diggs has really been back this year. And when we're talking about Stephon Diggs, he's going to be at home against the Colts. And this has huge shootout potential for a couple reasons. One being that it's a 50-point over-under. 50-point over-under is still pretty solid. And the Bills are a team that don't want to run the ball, and the Colts funnel you that way. They have the second best run D, the 23rd best pass D. So it's going to dare the Bills to pass the ball even more than they already want to pass the ball, which means there's going to be a ton of fireworks in this game. Now, on the flip side, playing a little bit devil's advocate, that could hurt them because that's what hurt them against the Jaguars. The Jaguars had a bad pass D, a good run D, but they just dropped back in coverage and dared the Bills to run the ball against them, and they struggled, right? I doubt that happens again. I think that they're going to be able to throw on the Colts and be just fine. Diggs is coming off his second 20-plus point game in the last 3 weeks. I mean, he comes out here and he puts up one more, 20-point game, and he's going to be in S tier for the rest of the season as, one of those guys that you can name with Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams like he was in the preseason. Then our next wide receiver is a guy that is just an absolute monster. He had 30 points. I made a tweet about this. He had 30 points last week, right, against the Rams on Monday Night Football on literally 10 touches. He had 30 points on 10 touches, 5 of them being rush attempts. Rush attempts are much less efficient than pass attempts. Like, that kind of efficiency on that volume is insane. And what's even better is that he can be that efficient on low volume, but he's also been commanding a 30% target share in a lot of games this year. And that's why I love him against the Jags, because of 2 reasons. He's going to command a ton of targets, and with Elijah Mitchell having some kind of wonky finger issue, he's apparently supposed to play, but I think that with the uncertainty at running back, they're going to give Deebo Samuel more snaps at running back, which means that he's going to have more touches than he usually would, right? Because he could go out there and have, he only had 5 catches last game, but he could go out there and he could have 9 catches and 7 rush attempts. And that's when we're talking about a guy that is putting up 20 points at the absolute worst. And I just think that they're going to absolutely dice up the Jaguars. The Jaguars have the 31st pass defense per DVOA. It's a really juicy matchup for Deebo. I think he gets there either on the ground or through the air. Then we have a guy that I still have plenty of hope in. A.J. Brown, he has been disappointing. I think this is probably a get-right spot for A.J. Brown. He has back-to-back dud weeks, and Houston's a really easy matchup. He's going to be at home against Houston, and Houston allows the 4th most real-life points per game, so they're a bad defense in general. They allow you to score a lot of points, and they're allowing the 7th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So I'm not worried about A.J. Brown yet. If he does nothing this game, then it's time to worry a little bit about A.J. Brown, but I think he's going to be just fine in this game. I think he's going to go off. I think this is a good game for Ryan Tannehill as well. I think this whole offense is just going to click here. I don't even mind Deontay Foreman as a fringe, high-end RB3 type play this week, which brings us to our wide receiver 6, J. Jeff, and he just murdered the Chargers last week. He had I want to say he had over 100 receiving yards. He had 9. I want to say it was 9 for 146. I could be off there. But he's going to be at home against the Packers. The Packers aren't a kind matchup to wide receivers. They're allowing the 3rd least fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, but I can't have Justin Jefferson any lower than this. He is just a threat to go crazy. He had 34% of the catchable targets last week. He's had back-to-back top 15 finishes. He's just a threat to go off. The volume is there. He's a guy that I think, if he didn't have some missed throws from Kirk, I remember he had the double move where he beats the guy in the double move and Kirk overthrew it. There's a couple of plays that if they just went Justin Jefferson's way, he'd probably be an S tier. Justin Jefferson has been that good this year. It just hasn't really showed up on the stat sheet. And moving past that, we're going to put CeeDee Lamb in here. CeeDee Lamb, another one of those guys in the Tyreek Hill game. The Chiefs, the Cowboys, we want as many people in this game as possible. That means CeeDee Lamb, that means Cooper Kupp, or not Cooper Kupp, that means Cooper as in Amari Cooper. And CeeDee Lamb has kind of cemented himself as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. He led the team in target share. He seems to be the wide receiver 1 over Cooper and Gallup. Now, he could easily get passed up by Cooper this week, or he could get passed up by Cooper on any given week. That's why I also like Cooper in this matchup. But just given the fact that this is going to be a high-scoring game, CeeDee Lamb is also a threat to, put up, 8 for 102. That's 100% in his range of outcomes. Then we have our last wide receiver in this tier, and a guy I think that some people are starting to sour on a little bit, is Jamar Chase. And if you can go out there, if you can send a little trade offer for Jamar Chase, he's a guy that I wish that I kind of mentioned in the trade target video. I think some guys are getting a little bit low on Jamar Chase. He hasn't, since his bye, he hasn't been great. He's finished outside of the top 24 the last 2 weeks, but the thing is that the usage has been there. He saw a 29% and a 32% target share in 2 of his last 3 games. Now, if you go back to earlier in the season when Jamar Chase was just lighting it up, he had low volume, so he was hovering around like a 20% target share, and his efficiency was wild. Now he's seeing the other side of that. He's seeing massive volume. The efficiency is kind of swinging back to almost him being inefficient in a way. And given the fact that he's, a good wide receiver, I think all of us think that Jamar Chase is an absolute stud, an absolute beauty of a man. I doubt that he sees upwards of a 25% target share and doesn't produce. Now, the Raiders, he's playing in Las Vegas. That's not a super, juicy matchup in the, what do they call it, the Death Star. But the Raiders are bottom 10 in pass defense DVOA. They're not giving up a ton of fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. But again, Jamar Chase is just somebody that I want to bet on. Now, if he has another dud game, I'll be honest, if it's still a high target share game, I'll keep him in A tier. But he could drop down to B tier range. I'm still not there yet. I still am very firm that Jamar Chase is, a stud wide receiver 1. Then in B tier, we have DK Metcalf. And he would be in A tier, but he just came off a bad game. We still don't know if Russell Wilson's like at 100% yet. He didn't look right. Russell Wilson was on his, Jameis Winston type shit. Just like there were a couple times where it was like, it was like 10. I mean, before this, he was just chucking it up, doing whatever. But there was it was just weird. They were up like 10-0. They were up 10-0. They were down 2 possessions for sure. It was like a minute left. I don't know why they were still going. Man, they might have been down 3 possessions. I can't remember. But like one of the last plays of the game, Russell Wilson just chucked it up to Tyler Lockett, tried to get him killed with like 30 seconds left on the clock. Just like chucked up like a hospital pass, jump ball in the end zone for him. But it wasn't like the game was even in reach. I don't know. But the thing with DK Metcalf is that the volume is there. I got to imagine Russ bounces back a little bit. I just want to be a little bit conservative with these rankings where DK Metcalf, I wouldn't start him over any of these guys. But he's still somebody I do feel strongly about. Now, the thing that kind of hurts him is that this isn't a juicy matchup at all. I still believe in DK Metcalf, the player, the talent. Thing is that I don't think that Kyler Murray plays in this game. So he's going to be playing at home against the Cardinals. The Cardinals are going to struggle a little bit. I don't think they're going to have Kyler. I think they have their bye next week. So I don't think that they're going to play Kyler. I don't think they're going to play DeAndre Hopkins. So this could be a game where they just roll over the Seahawks, kind of like the Panthers just did, or roll over the Cardinals like the Panthers just did, where they could lean on their run game. They don't have to pass the ball as much. And on top of that, the Cardinals are actually really, really strong against the pass. They're like top 5 in pass defense DVOA. They're not giving up a ton of points to opposing wide receivers. So that's why I have DK Metcalf in that next tier. Then we're going to put Chris Godwin and Mike Evans together. They're pretty much the same dude at this point. Like if you have Chris Godwin ranked somewhere, like Mike Evans shouldn't be too far behind. They both have a really, really strong matchup, right? They're going to be playing at home against the Giants. They have a 31-point team total. It's about a neutral matchup. They're going to score a ton of points. Now, the reason that I like Chris Godwin is because he has seen a 25% plus target share, so 25% or more. He's seen 25% or more of the targets the last 3 weeks. Mike Evans in his last 2 weeks has seen 11% of the targets and 9% of the targets. His volume is super volatile. He's more of a boom-bust guy. I think he has a higher ceiling than Chris Godwin, but on a weekly basis, he can just give you an absolute dud at this point. It seems like Chris Godwin, I wouldn't call him like the wide receiver 1, but he is just getting a lot of that volume, which brings us to Hollywood Brown at wide receiver 12. He has seen just absolute insane amount of volume. He's seen double-digit volume. He's seen double-digit targets in 4 of his last 5 games. And I'm not hearing any of the, Rashad Bateman. There's a lot of talk out there that like Rashad Bateman's going to come in and be like the alpha right away. Here's the thing, guys. I had Rashad Bateman was my wide receiver 2 in this class. I had him ahead of Devonta Smith. I had him ahead of Jalen Waddle. I love Rashad Bateman. He is a strong prospect. He's very, very good. But to say that he's just going to come in here and move Marquise Brown to the side when Marquise Brown has had a 25% plus target share the entire year, has been balling out, it's nonsense. Rashad Bateman's not going to come in and just make Marquise Brown, not fantasy relevant. And in fact, the crazy part is Bateman has actually led them to pass the ball more, which is great because the pie is expanding. And he has seen 13 or more targets in his last 2 games with Rashad Bateman. So Rashad Bateman isn't, taking away volume from Marquise Brown. He's actually seen the most volume he's ever seen since Rashad Bateman entered the lineup. Now he's going to be in Chicago, and Chicago is a great matchup for wide receivers. Chicago is allowing the 6th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Geez, I don't know why. I don't know why that really just eked out of my mouth there. Get a little water break here. But they're allowing the 6th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, so I think he's due for a nice little blow up game here from Marquise Brown. Feels about right. Then at wide receiver 13 in B tier, we have Deontay Johnson in Los Angeles. Now, the Chargers are actually pretty strong against the pass. They're allowing the 4th least fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. But Johnson, his volume is just too good for me to really care at this point. He's had 13 targets with Rudolph last week. He's had 13 or more targets in 3 of his last 4. So it's going to be not a pretty offense with, Mason Rudolph under center. It's never a pretty go with Mason Rudolph under center. But I still don't hate Deontay Johnson. He gets the targets. He's going to be, slightly efficient. So you just have to just have to lean on the usage at times. Now after that, we're going to be putting Keenan Allen in here to round out this tier. And I'm really warming up to Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen looks like he could be one of these like late season league winners. I wouldn't even mind if you wanted to put Keenan Allen like right here at the top of this tier. I wouldn't even mind at all. In fact, I honestly kind of, now that I'm looking at this, when I do the rankings later, I might end up putting him here, to be honest. I'm going to make the gut call. I'm going to put him ahead of Deontay Johnson for now. Now, with Keenan Allen, he has seen 11 or more targets in his last 3 games. He has top 15 finishes in all of those games. He's kind of bodying Mike Williams right now. Mike Williams is absolutely struggling. But, I mean, it's just one of those situations where Keenan Allen is just kind of doing what he's always done. He commands a ton of targets. He's a PPR machine. He's going to be at home against Pittsburgh, which isn't a great matchup for him. In terms of fantasy points allowed. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't, allowing a ton of fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. It's going to be a lower scoring game with Mason Rudolph, probably going to slow the game down. But PFF has Keenan Allen as the 3rd best matchup advantage against his opposing corners this week. So apparently he's supposed to torch the Steelers cornerbacks. Now, I'll also say shout out Jacoby Myers here. Jacoby Myers has a 99.9 matchup advantage against the Falcons tonight. So, I mean, Jacoby Myers is a nice-ass play. I don't have him in the top 24, obviously, but, I mean, maybe go check out Jacoby Myers, his over-under on Underdog. I don't know what it's at, but if it's anything under 50, take that over real quick. See what's popping with that over. Now, after Keenan Allen, we're jumping into that next tier. And to headline that tier is Amari Cooper. Now, I love Amari Cooper. The problem is that the volume hasn't been there. He only saw like a 12% target share last week. He's been averaging about an 18% target share. And on a team like the Cowboys, who aren't passing the ball at like a top 5 rate, an 18% target share just isn't enough to be anything more than like a firm wide receiver 2, which is what Amari Cooper has always been. And I like him this week because he's going to be in Kansas City. Like we said with CeeDee Lamb, we want as many pieces in this game as possible. Amari Cooper has legitimate like boom potential to put up like 25 plus points. If Amari Cooper goes out there, puts up, like 10 for 90 and 2 touchdowns, I wouldn't bat an eye one bit. Amari Cooper is good for that kind of thing. Then at wide receiver 16, this is where I had a really tough time ranking these wide receivers. Once wide receiver 16 hit, this is where it gets really tough for me. And I put Terry McLaurin here. Even though he's been, kind of cold recently, he hasn't been playing his best football. He's kind of been a boomer bust guy, and that's kind of what you just have to live with Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin has 3 games this year over 25 points, which is like absolutely insane. He has 3 games under 10 points. So he is kind of a boomer bust guy. He's coming off 2 down games. I think this is kind of where he can turn it up, even though it's a tough matchup. He's going to be in Carolina. They're allowing the second least fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, but you kind of just have to lean into with McLaurin. McLaurin's 8th in target share, and he's a threat to boom every single week. So you kind of just have to, hold on and just pray that he hits. It kind of just seems like, he'll have 2 down games and he'll have like a big game. This could be, the Taylor Heineke to Terry McLaurin, explosion game. Then we have at wide receiver 17, Tyler Lockett. Another, boomer bust wide receiver 2. This is kind of what this tier is all about, essentially. And Tyler Lockett's going to be at home against Arizona. Same thing with DK Metcalf. Not a great matchup, but they're both capable, to pop off for like 20-plus points in any given week. And I think that this is going to be the week where Russell Wilson is, going to bounce back. He's going to be playing a little bit better from his finger injury. He just got embarrassed by the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. He probably has, a little murder on his mind, wants to come out there and probably just run all over the Cardinals, especially if they don't have, Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. I imagine that the Seahawks kind of handle the Cardinals, but we'll see how that goes. Then we have DJ Moore, who is also a really tough rank because he really hasn't been good for fantasy in like 3 weeks. But I do have some new hope for DJ Moore if Cam Newton starts this game. Now, how do I make this a little bit bigger here? Let me just get the who cares about the picture? Yeah, so that's good. So this is a really good tweet from Drew at DF Bean Counter. Sam Darnold, got the most out of DJ Moore. The thing about that is that people think that Cam Newton's going to come in, he's going to run the ball a ton, he's not going to be good for the passing game. I think Cam Newton's actually really good for the passing game. One reason is that Drew also pointed this out in another tweet, but Cam Newton wasn't good in the passing game with the Patriots because what essentially happened is the Patriots didn't ask him to pass the ball at all. He ran the ball a ton. They weren't passing the ball. They didn't have a ton of options. Like Jacoby Myers was his number one wide receiver, but I think before that in his career, he was asked to pass the ball a ton. And in terms of efficiency, in terms of yards per attempt, he has been more efficient than Sam Darnold is in his entire career. Sam Darnold had his career high yards per attempt is 6.9. Cam Newton's career average for yards per attempt is 7.3. Sam Darnold in 2021's yards per attempt is 6.5. Cam Newton's 2020 yards per attempt was 7.2. So Cam Newton you could say that he's a better thrower of the football than Sam Darnold. I don't think that that's a crazy thing to say. So I think that Cam Newton's a nice little upgrade from Sam Darnold. I think that he can kind of reinvigorate this offense where they're going to be scoring a ton, having a lot of fun, getting McCaffrey involved, getting DJ Moore involved. So I do like DJ Moore a lot, especially given the fact that he's playing at home against Washington, who are allowing the most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So this could be, the DJ Moore revival game. Now, I'm not sure that they've actually said firmly if Cam Newton's starting or not, but that ranking is with the assumption that Cam Newton is starting. If he doesn't and it's PJ Walker, then he probably drops down into D tier. Probably still at the top of D tier, but just not with this caliber of wide receiver. But we're going to go to E tier here, and this is kind of just the back-end wide receivers twos where I don't love their matchups, but they are just guys that need respect on their name. And the first one that we're going to list is Michael Pittman. I'm just going to come out and say it. He's going to be in Buffalo. I hate this matchup. He could see shadow coverage from Tre'Davious White. The Bills allow the least amount of fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. They have the best defense in the league, according to Football Outsiders. The thing about Michael Pittman, though, is that he's this, boom-bust wide receiver where he's hyper-efficient on a low amount of targets. You kind of just have to trust the process that he is a threat to go crazy any given week. So I have to put some respect on his name, put him at wide receiver 19 this week, even in a bad matchup. Then we're going to go with not Michael Pittman. We're going to go with T. Higgins. And I'm still very high on T. Higgins. I still like T. Higgins a lot. He hasn't had a touchdown since week 2, which has really hurt his fantasy points, but the volume has been there, and so has the red zone volume. He's only seen one fewer red zone target than Jamar Chase on the entire year, even though T. Higgins missed that stretch of games when he was hurt. So he's still getting featured in the red zone. He's still getting plenty of targets. The production will come for T. Higgins. I'm very firm on that. And this week, the Raiders are a neutral matchup, but the Bengals have been passing the ball even more recently. They have 40.5 dropbacks per game over their last 4 games, which is 15th in that span. They're passing the ball more. I think we could see, if we don't see a boom from Jamar Chase, we could see a nice little week from T. Higgins. And the last wide receiver to kind of round out this tier here is going to be Jalen Waddle. Or not Jalen Waddle, my bad. It's going to be Adam Thielen. Now, he has, a little rough patch. He's finished outside of the top 30 in his last 2 games, but he's still wide receiver 16 on the season. Now, he's playing at home against Green Bay. Green Bay's been pretty good against the pass, but I still like Thielen just given his, boom potential. He can go out there, go absolutely crazy. He's another one of these boom-bust wide receiver 2s like a Michael Pittman where he can go out there, go crazy. If him and Kirk, are on their bullshit where him and Kirk are kind of clicking or whatever, he could easily have, 5 for 65 and 2 touchdowns. That could happen for Adam Thielen. Now, going into our E tier here, I meant that to go all the way to F tier, but I could have screwed something up. Oh, yeah, I just forgot to put D tier in my notes. Now, we're going to go with Jalen Waddle here. And Waddle has been an absolute revelation, man. I got to be honest with you. I'm moving him up my dynasty rankings. What he's doing on a points per game basis, his sophomore comps are actually pretty damn good. Now, he is the clear wide receiver 1 on this team. Last week against the Ravens, he ran 98% of the routes, which is crazy. And the next highest guy on the team was Albert Wilson, running 47% of those snaps, or 47% of the routes. Waddle is clearly like he's a number one wide receiver. He made some big plays against the Ravens, but his targets were down. It wasn't quite a cupcake matchup. The thing with Jalen Waddle is, man, we still haven't seen it. The thing that worries me with Jalen Waddle is he had this big game breaking potential in college where he breaks off these huge runs and like does some crazy stuff with his crazy speed. I don't know why I said crazy twice, but he's like this electric player. We still haven't seen that yet. But I think that's going to come for Jalen Waddle. I think that's going to come as he gets better. And with Jalen Waddle, he's playing the Jets this week. He's going to be in MetLife against my Jets. They're going to absolutely smoke the Jets. And the Jets are allowing the 8th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, and they are 32nd in pass defense per Football Outsiders. They probably allow more fantasy points to opposing wide receivers if teams didn't have to run the ball on them for the entirety of the fourth quarter. Jalen Waddle could go out there and absolutely make a mess of our secondary. One of our starting cornerbacks' last names is Guidry. I don't even know who he is. I literally don't even know who he is. So I do really like Jalen Waddle this week as a firm back end wide receiver 2. Then our wide receiver 23 is Mike Williams. And look, fellas, we keep getting burned. I know it's tough to start Mike Williams. I had my little brother come to me. He was like, I think I'm going to play Elijah Moore over Mike Williams this week. And I get it. I get the sentiment. It's just you have to keep playing Mike Williams. I know it's tough. It's just, I don't even know what to say at this point, but you kind of have to. He gets one more dud, and he's gone from my top 24 rankings. But according to Dwayne McFarland, he's been saying a lot of positive things about Mike Williams. And the thing about Mike Williams is that when he had the knee injury during this cold stretch, he's been really bad at beating man. So he hasn't been getting open as much. He hasn't been as efficient of a wide receiver, as good of a wide receiver as he's been this past week. Even though the targets weren't there, the production wasn't there, he beat man coverage at a super high rate, kind of, similar to what he was doing earlier on in the season. Now, the Chargers lost to the Vikings. They've been struggling ever since Mike Williams hasn't been balling out. So I think that they're going to probably try and get him back involved. They're still a really pass-heavy team. The volume is there. Justin Herbert is their quarterback. They're going to be playing at home against Pittsburgh. I like this as a bounce back spot for Mike Williams. Now, again, if he doesn't show any sign of life, like if he doesn't, I'd even be cool if he saw 10 targets, but he only put in like 5 or 50 yards. Fine, but I need to see the volume. I need to see the production. I need to see something. But I'm still standing firm on him. One more week that he's a wide receiver 2. Then we have Brandon Cooks as our last wide receiver, our wide receiver 24. He's going to be at Tennessee. He's seen a ton of volume with Tyrod Taylor. The Titans are allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. I really like Brandon Cooks. He gets a ton of targets from Tyrod Taylor. I think Tyrod Taylor is actually going to be pretty efficient against this defense. Maybe even give the Tennessee Titans a little bit of a run for their money. Keep this game a little bit closer than the Titans would like. But Brandon Cooks is a sneaky guy where if you can go out there and if you can trade for him for like wide receiver 3 prices, go do that as well. Now, that is going to do it for us today, fellas. As always, I love you guys. Thank you for like 7.25K subscribers. I'm going to have both of these videos uploaded for Thursday. Tomorrow, we're going to go over some risers in my rest of season rankings. On Saturday, we're going to do a little 2022 rookie mock draft. I'll talk about some of the rookies. Now, with that being said, make sure you check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. That's going to have all of my weekly rankings. I'm going to update them this afternoon. Make sure you check out Underdog. Use my promo code Ron on Underdog to get your deposit matched. Now, with all that being said, I got to write my outlines for today. It's early in the morning. We got a ton of stuff planned ahead of me today, so I'm not going to stick around here much longer. As always, I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr. Meaner.